just past a month since these two star football players were convicted of raping a 16-year-old girl. And the legendary head coach, Reno, he had been slammed for months. People said that he knew about that rape, and he didn't do anything about it. He actually chose to protect his players instead. Now, he denies that, and a grand jury is deciding if more people should face charges. So the case isn't over. But what did the school board do last night? They actually gave Coach Reno a 2-year contract extension. Anita Kay, former sex crimes prosecutor, now a defense attorney, she's going to join the conversation with us now. So don't you think the school board should have, I guess, waited for the grand jury to do its work first?
Kira, I am a little surprised that they did renew the contract right now rather than wait to see what happens, because my understanding is the grand jury is April 30th. So it's not that far out. We're not talking months and months away. But, you know, there are certain states, and Ohio is one of them, where football is big business. And a lot of times that clouds people's judgments because they get a lot for winning and being a winning team.
Well, Drew, what kind of message does this send to our kids, and especially the victims in this case?
Listen, it would be very easy to jump into the mob mentality and crawl all over this guy. But my understanding is the evidence is scant, if not non-existent, against this guy. The grand jury will do its job. If indeed he is exonerated, we will look silly for having, again, attempted to bring in another victim here. Listen, if anything, maybe the kids learn that due process is what's necessary in our legal system. I hope the victim and all that is completely unrelated to this guy's job as a football coach. I hope we'll find out.
Is this a case of, look, there's a very big difference between illegal and doing the right thing. In this case, with the football coach, he might not have done anything.
Charged with anything. Charged with nothing.
But did he do the right thing?
Yeah.
If he did know something. And, you know, it's interesting because most people, I told you I posted this on Twitter right before the show, and most people think it's, you know, they're calling it disgusting. They think it's horrible that he's got this contract extension. But LAA wrote, the coach is not responsible for what kids do. His job is as a football coach. The parents should be looked at, not the coach, which is interesting because this is a guy. And remember, the superintendent says this extension is for his work as an administrator, not as a coach. His other title is alternative school director, and he is a legend in that. I mean, he's with the Ohio Coaches Hall of Fame. He has more than 300 wins in his 30-year career. His name's plastered on the stadium and in the region's psyche. I mean, he's basically a local hero. So that may be part of why people think there's such a cover-up. But again,
and guys, I've heard evidence that he was actively doing the right thing, but that doesn't make headlines and it doesn't satisfy our mob mentality.
But Drew, hold on. There is this petition at change.org. More than 134,000 people have signed it because they want this coach canned. The petition mentions that there's these text messages from the convicted rapist suggesting that coach knew what was going on and that he was going to help keep them out of trouble. So I guess if that's true, Anita, could he be held accountable at all for that? Or is this strictly a moral issue like we were talking about?
Well, it could be depending. You know, I saw what those text messages were as well. And if he was trying to cover up, he could be considered an accessory after the fact because he's trying to protect his players and cover up for what happened. As well as if he knows that there is an abuse as a teacher, as a coach, he's a mandated reporter. So depending on what he knew, he would have to report that. So that's why I think it was a little premature to extend his contract because, of course, we don't want to blame him for something that he had absolutely nothing to do with and no responsibility. He's not charged with anything. But on the other hand, we don't want another scandal like Penn State. So, you know, they could have waited until after the grand jury to even make any issues with regard to the contract so they would know one way or the other and just keep silent on the subject for now.
You know, hold on, Bert, I'm being told we actually have Walter Madison on the phone, Malik Richmond's lawyer, one of the convicted high school players. So, Walter, you know, what can you tell us about Coach and what he knew and didn't know? Was Coach protecting these boys? Did he know what was going on?
I cannot comment to that. It certainly was a pending investigation. I don't represent the coach. My focus obviously was not on what he did or did not do, but I can tell you that There is a tremendous amount of support for him in that community. I know that he's done a wonderful, many number of wonderful things for many student athletes, helped them go on with life. So, I can't really comment. I don't know. That wasn't my focus.
You represented Malik Richmond, and you saw a lot of the evidence. Do these texts exist? That some are claiming that have signed this petition to get the coach fired? Do these texts exist that coach was going to do whatever he could to keep them out of trouble?
Well, again, I can't comment on anything other than what Malik Richmond did, and Malik Richmond had none of those text messages and the signatures and all. You kind of compounded your question there. I don't know anything about signatures demanding for something to happen to the coach. I didn't see that, or nor was I privy to that until you mentioned it.
I mean, there are similarities, and I don't want to bunch the Paterno case with this because they're so vastly different.
A lot of people are, though.
It's so vastly different, but you do hear some reoccurring themes that the coach was so powerful and so influential in the community that they had a responsibility to do the right thing and didn't do the right thing. Now, we're not saying that he didn't hear, because as Dr. Drew said, we just don't have that evidence yet, but certainly the cultures sound the same.
Walter, thanks for... Go ahead, Walter.
I was just going to say, I think, though, that the larger issue, of course, the coach is under scrutiny right now, but I think that a community failed, and that's parents and the like, and us as responsible adults. I don't think that education is properly being dedicated to these children about responsibility to themselves and others. The fact that people aren't aware what constitutes rape in Ohio, that's just not something reserved on children. Adults do not know. I spoke with police officers who didn't know that rape can occur in more than one form. So although he's under scrutiny right now, I think, quite frankly, we all are as responsible adults and educators. So I think that's kind of what I think the focus should be on, in my opinion.
Well, responsibility, no doubt. When you see the pictures that were taken from those parties and the fact that it took so long for folks to be held accountable, it's really tough to swallow as a parent when you know that kind of behavior exists.
And I don't know that I understand that there are, parameters that do define rape, but you might not know what rape is by way of legal standards, but you know what's right and wrong.
And clearly, they didn't do what was right.
Yeah.
Grand jury looking into possible new charges in the Steubenville rape case that was picked last week. We're going to keep you posted.